Good afternoon, class. My name is Zachary Ono. So today we are going to talk about utilization of virtual machines to understand the principles of ethical hacking. The application of virtual machine has proved to be extremely useful in the teaching of concept of ethical hacking. This has been done using a controlled lab. So in this case study, Keophris Level 1 virtual machine was used as a targeted system representing a vulnerable Linux system, which could be found in old systems. In this case, it was easy to determine how vulnerable a system is because of its outdated service in a configuration, which make it easy to hack the entire system. The first step was to discover and enumerate the network using tools such as Nmap to discover any running port and services. Where it was discovered that there were many vulnerabilities such as Samba on port 139 and 445, Apache with mode SSI on port 443, among others. The most successful way to get initial access and then achieve root access privilege was by exploiting the Samba service, particularly the trans2 open buffer overflow found in Samba services up to version 2.2.8. Upon confirmation of the targeted machine IP address, normally 192.168.1.101, and the version of the vulnerable service, the most convenient exploit mode was available in the Metasploit framework, specifying the remote host, picking a payload such as the Linux reverse TCP share payload, and conducting the attack resulted in getting the root share immediately. Other ways, including the exploitation of the mode SSI buffer overflow in Apache with the help of the open fork exploit, yielded the same success. Since first one was able to get a share with limited privileges and then escalate the privilege to root level due to some kernel vulnerabilities such as ptrace/kmode. Whatever method was used, after getting a share access, it was possible to create a new user account with root privileges by running such commands as user add to add the account and edit the sudo users file or assign the account to the wheel or root group. However, there are certain configuration-based measures that may help mitigate the vulnerabilities when upgrading or replacing the software is impossible. In particular, the implementation of firewalls rules using IP tables should minimize exposure to services by allowing access only to those ports and IP addresses that provide the necessary functionality. Furthermore, the possibility of anonymous and non-session access should be disabled for the Samba configuration, and files and directories that have appropriate permissions that would limit unauthorized enumeration by MIHOS 8 2019. Using additional security models such as SE lines and APP armor in enforcement mode would enable mandatory access control mechanisms, which would limit the activities of service processes and prevent privilege escalations. Moreover, it will be useful to disable the possibility of root login to the system via SSH and use the possibilities of strong authentications as well as long analysis using Fair2Ban or similar software. Thus, the principle of least privilege should be used for each service and user account to minimize opportunities for attackers to perform privilege escalation, even if they manage to perform a buffer overflow attack. Knowledge about common attack families is very important for C-suite education and defense planning. Buffer overflow is a situation where the program tries to write more data into the buffer than it can accept. Thus, writing the extra part of data into the neighboring memory locations and causing arbitrary code execution. This attack family belongs to the category of memory corruption attacks and is commonly used in remote exploits. The best example is the Samba Trans2 Open vulnerability used to gain root access directly on Keptrace. Privilege escalation is the art of increasing the privileges obtained by attacker, whether horizontally for other users in account, or vertically for administrations from root. It belongs to the post-exploitation attacks family and is used after gaining initial access due to some misconfiguration of vulnerability. Rootkits are types of malware designed to remain invisible and provide administrator right for exploiting the system. They belong to the persistent and sheet attack family and run either at user or kernel level. The Trojans are programs pretending to be legitimate software but tricking users into installing them. They belong to the social engineering based malware family and create backdoors on the attack machine. Backdoors are undocumented ways to access the software or system which were created either by design or by attackers. The type of attack belongs to the persistent mechanism attack family and bypass user authentication mechanisms. Viruses are self-replicating programs which attach to the file and spread through them. Upon execution by users, viruses belong to the file infactor malware family and use user attractions to spread. Return-oriented programming is an advanced exploitation technique which uses sequence of existing instructions, so-called guard gates in libraries to perform the malicious actions without being detected by data execution protection mechanisms. This technique belongs to the code reuse attack family and may be used to improve buffer overflow reliability. Finally, social engineering attacks are psychologically tricked, which cause users to reveal some sensitive information or perform some action compromising their security. Stylion 2025. Such attacks belong to the human-targeted vector attack family and are used in initial attack vector before any technical exploit is applied. In conclusion, the Keptrick Level 1 lab reinforces the significance of preemptive vulnerability management and defense in-depth approach. With technical measures coupled with the knowledge of attack taxonomy by organizations leadership, they can adequately safeguard their legacy IT infrastructure from similar attacks. This way, they can be able to manage their resources appropriately. Thank you.